Ukrainian and foreign mass media. According to on behalf of the Minister of Interior, Arsena Avakova, would like to tell you about what the Ministry of Interior is doing on introducing sanctions against the persons who sponsor terrorism and who support separatism. According to the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers, the committee is set up, the co-chairs of which are the Minister of Justice, Pavel Petrenko, and Pavel Klimkin, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The active participation in this committee on introducing sanctions against officials and persons financing terrorism is the active participation in that takes the Ministry of the Interior. And we had the meeting of this committee where the representatives of about 20 different ministries and agencies participated. It was held at the Ministry of the Interior, and we developed the following proposals. The Ministry of the Interior suggests to define groups of persons responsible for terrorism and separatism in order for us to introduce, besides criminal responsibility, the financial sanctions, so that we really strike them at the most painful spot, the pocket. Ukraine is suffering from unfriendly actions of the Russian Federation, who gave hostage to such shelter to such scoundrels who are robbing off Ukraine. And our ministry is talking about Yanukovych, his family, his son Alexander. We are starting our very serious work on arresting the assets of these people abroad and in Ukraine, so that they cannot support separatism or terrorism anymore. Those persons who fall under these sanctions, they will not be limited to Yanukovych, and only those who ran away to Russia. I will announce 7 groups of persons. The first one, civil servants of the local authorities of Crimean Republic, and also the MPs of the local councils of the Republic of Crimea, who were helping organizing the referendum of the 16th of March, and also the separatist and terrorist actions all over Ukraine. These are all the ministers and the civil servants of the so-called Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics, who were holding their position starting from April. These were the leaders, members of the illegal gangs, criminal gangs. These are all the MPs of the Parliament of the Crimea who were voting for annexation of Crimea. These were the representatives of mass media, Ukrainian and foreign, who were calling to separatism, organizing terrorism against the Ukrainian authorities. These will be the officials, the members of parliament of Russian Federation and other states who were calling to terrorism and who were against the territorial integrity of Ukraine, and also physical and legal persons who were sponsoring terrorism. And also the Ministry of Culture discussed the list of the persons who were publicly supporting annexation of Crimea and the split of Ukraine. Besides, the Ministry of Interior comes up with the initiative to strengthen the punishment on some articles of the criminal code. We are preparing the draft amendments to the criminal code that will introduce punishment on some articles that I will enumerate. Besides confiscation of property, arrest of accounts and other things. Many people die, are killed, and become disabled. Just yesterday in one of the regions, the shell was exploded, and one person was killed, and 7 children are wounded, and they have become disabled. And for that, those who are financing separatism and terrorism are to be responsible. Previously, there was no material responsibilities related to these criminal articles, and we will request the Parliament to introduce some articles which require material responsibility. Besides depriving of freedom, there will be confiscation of property and the rest of the accounts, and from this money we'll be paying money to disabled people. We will be restoring the infrastructure of our state, which is destroyed now. These are Articles 109, Article 110 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine, Article 111 of the Criminal Code, the high treason 113, 114, and 258, terrorism, which is involvement into act of terrorism, public call for doing the act of terrorism, creating the terrorist group, and also we demand confiscation of property for persons who participated in creating the illegal bands operating against Ukraine, and also Article 261 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine. And that's related to different chemical and other substances, because you know that the militants all the time occupy the territories of chemical plants, and these guys are to be responsible, not only being put to prison, they have to be responsible by all their property. And we believe that the parliament and the president and all the institutions will support that idea, because it's bad when millionaires, rich people in Ukraine or in Russia sponsors terrorism or separatism. Thank you.
Who said this? Any questions? This was in inverted commas. How many people will be on the list and how many of them are Ukrainians? This is the classification according to which the investigation team will choose people. For instance, there are 60 MPs of the Parliament of Crimea who have voted for the dissolvement of Crimea from Ukraine, and I'm warning them. Everyone will have a criminal case launched them. If you want to go to Russia, then go to Russia. There's no point to hold business in Ukraine for you. And let us also introduce sanctions against Russia, and let us not allow people who split Ukraine, who finance terrorists, to earn money on our territory. We will also demand, as far as every such person is concerned who will be proclaimed guilty by the court, they will be declared for international investigation, and let people like Zhirinovsky and Zyuganov relax beyond the polar circle or in Chukotka Peninsula. Could you tell us, please, apart from these articles, we have joined the International Criminal Code, and these issues about the international search for these people, not only on the territory of the Russian Federation, but in other countries as well. So our country had to sign a number of international agreements. Have we signed them? Co-head of this committee is the Minister for Justice, Pavlo Petrenko. This is the function of the Justice Ministry. Today we had the first sitting of our committee. The day after tomorrow we'll have another sitting, and all the ministries have got the obligation to prepare respective proposals as far as the legislation is concerned. In the U.S. after 9/11, they adopted the so-called Patriot Act, according to which the authorities got a huge authority to search and know. Now we get to know horrible facts that leaders of the terrorist organizations have business on the entire territory of Ukraine, only registered to their relatives and so on. Now we will maintain good exchange of information between different bodies so that we can arrest assets even if we only suspect this, if it is used for terrorism. This is important because you see that on the territory of Ukraine, the things are happening, like, for instance, grenade launch at the kids' room of the mayor of Lviv, Sadovy. We have to put an end to it, hitting a blow on the financial side of what's happening. And we will also provide for the order when the people who will voluntarily inform us on this will be relieved of criminal responsibility. We will stimulate terrorists to whistleblow. Of course, this does not pertain to cases when they have already committed terrorist acts that resulted in the loss of life. We call upon all the MPs to support this legislation. It is very needed for Ukraine. We have to hit the pocket of the terrorists. Legal Business Inform, you mentioned the Supreme Council of Crimea and your forecast. Will Mr. Yefremov be there or MPs from the Ukrainian parliament? And how will you collect the information? We open a portal in the internet, in the Facebook, and the information that I have told you about is fully on the account of Mr. Avakov, and we will expect information from citizens about such things, and we are not sitting on our hands. We know who does what. There's a certain procedures about MPs, and of course this is the responsibility of Prosecutor General's office, but we as police can appeal to the Prosecutor's General office. I tell you that the mayor of the city of Stakhanov, Mr. Borisov, was detained and the criminal case launched against him according to the Article 110 because he was actively involved in organizing the so-called referendum, and he is already telling us about a number of people who were inspiring this, who promised that Russia will come and everyone will be in clover, and they will now have to respond for this, to be taken into account. As we have our next speaker, we shall give the floor to the next speaker. I believe that Mr. Gerashenko